Schilling missed on the Hall of Fame again.
He's got a higher WAR than 50 Cooperstown pitchers.
The baseball writers know who's the best. He's just not good enough.
Yup, the same expert group that didn't vote unanimously for Babe, Hank, Willie, Yogi, Jackie Robinson, Joe D, the Man, Mickey, or Teddy Ballgame.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Will O'Toole greeting you once again for Park Ridge Sports History. And this week, I'd like to clean up some matters from my past shows, but really get into the Hall of Fame election, or actually snubbing once again, of a ball player I really think should be in there, and that's Curt Schilling of the Boston Red Sox, Philadelphia Phillies, Arizona Diamondbacks, and for a time with the Houston and Baltimore franchises as well. I'd like to thank you all for joining me. I know this has been a snowy weekend. It's been bitter cold, so I hope you can join me for some hot stove action for baseball as we get closer and closer to quote-unquote spring training. Hopefully the lockout will end soon with an agreement between the Players Association and the Major League Baseball owners that we can get these guys back on the diamond and have some warm memories of spring and summer once again. Anyway, the focus of this week's show is really on what I feel has become a snubbing of a ball player who really is going to go down in a significant way in baseball history. Now, his teammate, David Ortiz, not too many people would argue with Ortiz becoming a Hall of Fame candidate and elected to Cooperstown. He was phenomenal as a clutch hitter for the Red Sox for so many years. Basically, the Red Sox got him off the trash heap through metrics, analytics, and WAR. From the Minnesota Twins. He had a couple of good years there, but never his career really flowered, really exploded with the Red Sox. And of course, how can anyone forget the 2004 season when the Red Sox basically down to their last outs? Ortiz comes through in big ways, keeps the Yankees from sweeping the Red Sox in a series that probably would have devastated, if people don't talk about this, but if the Yankees had won that 2004 playoff to secure the pennant against the Red Sox and go into the World Series against the National League winners, the St. Louis Cardinals, it may have devastated the Red Sox franchise for another 50 years, maybe even 100. But the Red Sox really snagged victory out of the jaws of defeat, go on, win 4 straight against the Yankees, 2, of course, in Yankee Stadium, one of which is by Ortiz's teammate, Curt Schilling. Who can forget that he got to the mound with a bleeding ankle. The stitches, he had gotten hurt. The stitches had opened, but he continued to really be a warrior on the mound, and he threw 6 or 7 innings in Game 6, allowed only 1 run, I believe, and 2 or 3 hits, maybe 4, as the Yankees were pushed and the Red Sox pushed for a Game 7. Without Schilling's efforts in that Game 6, we wouldn't be talking about the end of the curse for the Red Sox today. Now, I have done a study from an analytical point of view with Curt Schilling, but I think the thing that bothers me the most is the fact that Schilling, and I was amazed about this. Do you realize that Schilling, now Baseball Reference I'm using for all of my statistics, as I state, it's a great website for all things sports, but they also, I wanted to look this up, and that was the gist of the cartoon. First of all, I am amazed and shocked sometimes what traditions baseball keeps in and baseball lets go. One of the things that they continue to keep in, I really believe this, is the fact that obviously only one unanimous vote or selection into the Hall of Fame. That was Mariano Rivera. It was just something whose time was coming. But just think about this. How do you not vote for the players that I listed in the cartoon as a first ballot Hall of Fame player? You're talking about Babe Ruth, and of course he was in the first class at the Hall of Fame. But later on, you're talking about Hank Aaron, Willie Mays. Willie Mays is seen as the second greatest player, maybe arguably the greatest player in baseball history. All right. Maybe Babe Ruth has two things going for him. One is that he was also an excellent pitcher. Nobody realizes he won 94 games prior to becoming a full-time outfielder for the Yankees. Number two, and actually I did some study on this. I believe he was 4-2 lifetime against Walter Johnson. And they had some epic duels, Babe Ruth and Walter Johnson. In fact, they pitched, both of them went to extra innings. They both completed the games. Babe Ruth and the Red Sox, did win the game. And I think Ruth beat Johnson 4-2, and Ruth struck out 12 and Johnson struck out 15 in an extra inning affair. They were just brilliant in the game. And I think I've even inflated the final score, but I think they met 6 times, Walter Johnson and Babe Ruth, and Ruth bested him 4-2. Now, obviously the Red Sox were a good team even when Ruth was there. Walter Johnson, of course, was mired for most of his career with the Senators, although they do get to 2 World Series and win one. But regardless, you're talking about Babe Ruth not getting a unanimous vote. And maybe at the time in context, maybe the selection committee didn't want everyone to come on board with that, okay? Then you have Hank Aaron, all right? Hank Aaron does not receive a full 100%. The guy who beat Babe Ruth in the home run race. A guy who I spent last year, as we are approaching really his first year anniversary of his passing. Here's a guy who hit 305, 35, and 105 every year. That was his average stats every year in the major leagues. An MVP, a perennial all-star, a World Series champion, a Rookie of the Year, a Gold Glove recipient, 3,000 hits, or 755 home runs. And he didn't get unanimous vote. Now, he was close. I'll give you that. In fact, Aaron had 97.83. 97.83. Ready for this? Hank Aaron was 97.83. Willie Mays was lower. Babe Ruth was even lower. Babe Ruth was 95.13. Now, I get it. The writers may be put off by Ruth's behavior. Maybe he was kind of a clownish with them. Maybe these players in interviews rub the writers the wrong way. But if you can't put that aside as a writer and say, boom, this guy was an all-timer, not just a great player in his own decade or his, during the time that he played. These guys I'm talking about right now are all-timers that you would argue not with how great they are, but where they follow. What would you list them as if you put them on a Mount Rushmore? Probably the biggest argument, and here is Willie Mays, 95.13 for Ruth, Wagner, 95.13. Willie Mays, 94.68. Probably regarded as having the greatest catch in all of baseball history with his 54 catch in the World Series off the bat of Vic Wertz. And what made that play remarkable was not the catch. It was that Willie spun and threw the ball from deep center field of the Polo Grounds. And when you're talking about the deep center field of Polo Ground, it's like you're not talking about, second base and the span of Rhode Island. You're talking about center field being second base and Alaska. And he was throwing that from Point Barrow all the way back to, let's say, Los Angeles on a throw. which kept really Cleveland at bay and was many people regard as the turning point in that World Series because Mays' catch helped secure game one. And of course, they go on and sweep the Indians, the team that won the most games that year, won 111 games and defeated the Yankees by 8 full games. And that's been talked about here on Park Ridge Sports. Willie Mays, 94.68. Okay. Ted Williams, probably the single greatest hitter in the last 70 years, I would imagine. 344 lifetime batting average, 521 home runs. Remember that he lost a few seasons because of his heroics in both World War II and Korea. Probably you could add on at the bare minimum, maybe another 100 home runs. And probably he would have gotten maybe another 600 hits. Regardless, Williams, take a look at his war. Take a look at Willie's war. Take a look at Babe Ruth's war. All right. And they still didn't get the full complement of votes from the baseball writers. Stan Musial, who was called the man. And you're not acquiring nicknames for any old reason. It's called the man. He was loved. My mother-in-law will tell you this. He was beloved in Brooklyn, even though he was the enemy with the St. Louis Cardinals. And, of course, an unbelievable hitter. Maybe not the same power that Ted Williams had. I always thought this. Ted Williams was kind of like John Wayne of baseball. And Stan Musial was kind of like Jimmy Stewart. Both fantastic players. You know, Musial wins a couple of World Series for St. Louis. Probably was more of a slice gap hitter than Williams. Didn't have the overall, how do I say this? He had 475 home runs, but I don't think when you're talking about power, you say, all right, Musial's up there with the power boys like Mays, Aaron, and Williams, and Ruth, or Killebrew, okay? He was more of a slicer. And even he, who probably never met a man he didn't like, even he doesn't get the full complement of votes. All right, now we talk about Yogi, a 3-time MVP. Here's where I laugh at the writers. The guy wins 3 times the MVP. Now, maybe he doesn't have the stats that the outfielders do, but he is playing probably the most difficult position in all of sports, catcher. And yet he wins 3 MVPs, averaged about 25, 27 home runs, and I'm using Baseball Reference, about 85 to 90 RBIs a year, hit 285 for his career. Those aren't bad numbers for a catcher. See, I'm putting it in context. And the writers, even in his day, realized the greatness of Yogi because you're not winning. You may win 1 by luck, an MVP, but you're not winning 3 unless you're regarded as one of the great players of your time. And remember, Yogi was a teammate of Mickey Mantle. Yogi was a teammate of Joe DiMaggio. Yogi was a teammate of Whitey Ford, although, yes, Whitey being a pitcher, all right, maybe not regarded in the MVP light that Mantle and Joe D were. And by the way, Whitey Ford, we have talked about also on this show, unbelievable winning percentage, great performance in the World Series. I will tell you this, I got information read about Whitey would always be held back to face the best pitcher, usually on the other staff. And I'm going to go into that today as well. Casey would leave him and have him pair off against the ace of the opposing team staff, which is why, one, he doesn't win as many games as probably he should have, but he still has a high winning percentage. And everybody can argue, well, wins, the big thing with the metrics guy, wins don't count. But wins do count in this respect. Players go out and perform much better for players that they have, or pitchers that they have confidence in, pitchers that move the game along, pitchers that have a low walk, a low base hit ratio. All right, pitchers who know how to pitch, and Whitey was one of those guys. Has the highest winning percentage of all time. And do you realize he had a lower WAR than Curt Schilling. And Whitey's in the Hall of Fame, justifiably so. Here's another guy who had a low Hall of Fame. Ready? Well, instead of you guys showing you my pictures, myself all the time. Here's Curt, and we're going to get into the particular cards I picked because it's with the Diamondbacks and, of course, the Red Sox. All right? And I do want to get into it. I also want to talk about this. Mickey Mantle, who is the icon. If you ever thought about a ball player that is symbolic of the 1950s, the Eisenhower era, all right, post-World War II, I don't think there is one player that comes to mind more than Mickey Mantle. You know, we're talking about Davy Crockett, you know, the move to the suburbs, Levittown, but the success of the Yankees, the greatness of Mantle. Not one of my favorite players, and I shouldn't say it that way. He was a great player. I just think Willie Mays was by far the better player. And, of course, we can go into arguments about that. But, you know, Mantle had many injuries, played on a number of great teams, helped. And I will tell you this, Yogi not only wins 3 MVPs, you know, he played on the most World Series champions. I mean, every fall he was basically penciling in, all right, where do I go this year? Because I know the Bronx Bombers are going to be there. Mantle was the same way, all right? From 51 on, 51 to 64, think about it. Mantle and Yogi played in the 50 Worlds. Well, let's go back. They played in the 51 World Series, the 52 World Series, the 53 World Series, the 55, 56, 57, 58, 60, 61, 62, and 63. And for Mantle, he played on the 64. Okay? Guys, that's a ton. I mean, that's a World Series every year, almost every year, but 3 or 4. I mean, that's really incredible, okay, for both those players. All right? There has to be a link between those two individuals and their success. And remember, Mantle's also an MVP number of times. He's also a Triple Crown winner. Yogi, as I stated, a 3-time MVP, and neither one of them got full 100% of the Hall of Fame. Now, let's come back to this. Here is Curt Schilling. I just want to read this off. Ready? Now, I'm using the new metrics, and we'll get into this. And this will astound you. All right? Based on the new metrics, his WAR, ready for this? And I will tell you this before I get into this. Baseball Reference and WAR, there's like 2 different WAR formulas for pitchers. They almost have like a regular WAR, and then they have a pitcher's WAR. And the pitcher's WAR might be slightly inflated. So I am only using the one that I'm using kind of the combination of players, okay? So if I used Schilling's 80.5 as his WAR for all pitchers, I'm going to come back to that. But his WAR as a player was 79.5, all right? So it's a little less. Ready for this, though? His WAR is higher than the following players. Now, just listen to the guys. And I'm using 79.5. It is higher than Tom Glavine. It is higher than Old Hoss Radbourn, 73.2. It is higher than Carl Hubble, Don Sutton, Red Faber, Jim Palmer. I was amazed at that because most fans of the 1960s and 70s would equate Palmer and Seaver on the same level in terms of talent, pitching, and stats. Yet the WAR for Palmer is like 40 to 60 points below Tom Seaver's. It's amazing. He is higher than Vic Willis, Ted Lyons, Dan Kovaleski, who was a good pitcher, John Smoltz, a contemporary. He is higher than Roy Halladay, a Hall of Famer, obviously, Bob Feller, Amos Russi, Ed Walsh, Mickey Welch, Dazzy Vance, and I kind of blew what I was kind of getting at here. Dennis Eckersley, Joe McGinty, Juan Marichal, Don Drysdale, Rube Waddell, Hal Newhouser, Jim Bunning, Clark Griffith, Epa Mordecai Three Finger Brown, Mariano Rivera. I'm throwing him out because he's a relief pitcher. Red Ruffing, Wade Hoyt, Al Spalding, Whitey Ford had only a 53.5 WAR. Sandy Koufax. He's higher than Sandy Koufax, guys. And here's a great picture of Koufax, if I can find it. And he's going to be, I'm going to be doing another one on Koufax. Here's a great Koufax picture. This is 63. He's higher than Koufax, probably the most dominant pitcher in the 60s, you could argue. The most dominant pitcher in the 60s. And he's higher than Sandy Koufax. Higher than Early Wynn, who won 300 games. He is higher than Hoyt Wilhelm, probably the first relief, but he's a relief pitcher. I'm throwing him out of the talk as well. And he's higher than Eddie Jones. All right, all-time ball player. My whole point, the people who I just read, those pitchers I just read, they're all in the Hall of Fame. And Schilling's not, with a 79.5 WAR. And I'm using the deflated number of WAR, not his pitcher number. And by the way, David Ortiz had a 54.5 WAR. It's a full 20 points below lifetime of Curt Schilling, who is seen as a part-time player because he's a pitcher and he takes the hill once every 5 games. Just want to show you something, though. I was looking. First of all, if you thought he wasn't a Hall of Famer, let's just take a look. Want to hear something about Schilling? Let me just see him again. And I apologize. Thank you for your patience here about me getting him. Schilling played 20 years, I do believe, in the major leagues. He had a 216 and 146 record. He's 70 games above 500. He has a 590 winning percentage. The teams, I was amazed when I was going through all my research on this. And believe me, I have some research on this. And one stat really did jump out at me. He does beat every team in the major leagues, including the teams he played for. He beat Philadelphia, he beat Boston, and he beat Pedro Martinez of the Red Sox. He does beat Baltimore. He beats Houston a number of times, and he beats Arizona. Now, the reason I'm making such a case for Schilling, he had a number of years where he did get hurt, or else his stats would probably be higher. And the if is always true about every player. You know, if Mantle didn't get hurt so much, even though he was hurt less than actually Joe D. I never realized that. All right. But actually, here's another Hall of Famer. Didn't play a lot of games. And that was Willie Stargell. Stargell, I think the highest number of games he ever played was like 145 in the season. And actually, he started playing more games as he got older than he was younger. And I don't think he was platooned as a young player. Just had too much talent. Anyway, as I digress, and everybody who knows, we're sitting in a bar having a couple of beers and a burger, and we're talking all things sports. And I was looking, and I'm going to stay focused back on Schilling. Okay? Schilling spent 20 years in the majors. He comes up at age 21, and really I was looking at his early ledger. He wins 4 of his first 15 assignments. All right? He goes 4-11. And I have to say this, the first 4 years between Baltimore and Houston, I really don't think Baltimore and Houston knew what they had, because he seemed to be late season call-ups where they got him, they just brought him up. All right. He didn't start with the club, I don't believe, in any of those 4 seasons. He finally beats his first actual major league win is against the Kansas City Royals and Steve Farr. That's his first major league win. It comes in his 3rd season in the majors with Baltimore. Then he gets traded to Houston and he goes 3-5. And then he is traded to Philly and he starts to prosper. But here's what I was looking at. And this is what I'm saying. He's 70 games over 500 for his career. And yet Schilling's, his teams come out. I averaged out. He played for some lousy ball clubs. I mean, terrible ball clubs that that 93 Philly team that actually got to the World Series, they were really bookended by a lot of mediocre seasons, even with some good managers. And they were still bad, right? Injuries, I get all that. They had some terrible injuries, Darren Daulton, Lenny Dykstra. So the Phillies may have been an early team of the 90s. They do have the 93 season, but they never really recover from the injuries and a lot of other things that went on with the ball clubs. All right. However, he goes in his first year for the Philly club, he's 14-11 in 1992. The Phillies finished 22 games under 500. The next year, all right, with Philly, so he's building. They're seeing something in him. They go 16-7, and they reverse fortune. They win 97 games, go again, and 65 losses. Obviously, they win the pennant. They lose on that dramatic Joe Carter home run off Mitch Williams in Game 6 against Toronto. But you can see, in 2 years with a team that basically, if you look at it, 22 games up, and actually 22 games under 500, and then 35 games up. They're really 13 games over 500. So it's like a team that's, 86-76, 87-75. He actually wins 30 games against 18 setbacks, which is over 600. Now, I'm pretty sure over the next 3 years, Schilling is hurt. He has, in fact, when I was looking, there's a long span between decisions, and I'm pretty sure Schilling got hurt. In the next 3 years, 94, 95, and 96, and you got to remember that there was a strike in there. He goes 18-23. And then, of course, he picks up. The next few years, Philly, he goes 17-11, 15-14, 15-6. He makes the All-Star teams all 3 years. So he wins 47 against 31 setbacks. Ready for this? The Phillies in 97, 68-94 under Terry Francona, who would later on be his manager with Boston. Under Francona, they go 75-87. And under Francona again, they go 77-85. Meanwhile, he's over 500 all 3 seasons. All 3 seasons. Schilling is over 500. So it's not like he benefited from playing with good players. Oh, and by the way, Schilling, here's the other thing. By the way, Schilling was born in Alaska. I never realized how tall he was. He was 6'5". He never looked that big to me on the mound. He was really 6'5", 200, maybe 215 at his tops when he was later in his career. But I never realized he was 6'5", okay? And born in Anchorage, Alaska. I don't know whether he's the first player from Alaska to play in the major leagues. I got to look that up. But in that 1 year, he goes 15-14, leads the league in innings pitched, 268. The year before, he pitched 254. All right. The year after that, when he goes 15-6 with the Phillies, he threw 180. Then the Phillies decide to trade him, and he goes to Arizona. Now, although Arizona, I was looking at this through the stats, although he goes 11-12 on the season, Arizona played under 500 with him there. The Phillies, he was 6-6. They were under 500 when they traded him. But here's the interesting thing. Actually, Schilling is traded and pitches in his first outing a win for the Diamondbacks, and it actually ties him for first place in the West. Now, they fade in the pennant, but they have something there because in 2001, he and, of course, the Arizona Diamondbacks win the championship, win their first World Series in franchise history. So right away, you got to say to yourself that Schilling has got to be an important piece, not just in Arizona history, but in Major League history. Now, obviously, he has help. Luis Gonzalez has the big 2-out hit over the Yankees. And Randy Johnson, of course, wins the Cy Young and, is the lefty compatriot to the right-hander Schilling. And together they win Ready for this? Let me just get their stats, because it is amazing. You can just peruse all this together. Actually, ready for this? Schilling won 22 against 6 setbacks. Randy Johnson was 21-6. Together, they won 43 of the total number of, I think they had 95 wins that year. They had 92. So they won almost half of the games for the Arizona Diamondbacks. To make it short, they needed both guys. Schilling had a 2.98, Randy Johnson 2.49. Ready for this, though? Schilling finished second in the Cy Young that year. He finished second three times and finished fourth in the Cy Young race. But in 3 of the Cy Youngs that he finished second, ready for this, guys? Schilling had a higher WAR than the winner of the Cy Young winner in the opposite league. In other words, this: Schilling had a 7.8 with Boston when he finished second. Roger Clemens, all right, he loses out to Johan Santana. Johan had an 8.7. Schilling had a 7.8. But look at this: Roger Clemens, who won 18 games against 4 setbacks for the Astros, and this was this is 2004. Schilling's WAR was higher, 7.8, to Roger Clemens, who won the award, 5.4. Now, obviously, Randy Johnson was second that year. He was 16-14. He had an 8.4 WAR and finished behind Clemens. But I'm just making a case that Schilling actually had a higher WAR than the Cy Young winner in the other league. Ready for this? The year, that's 2004. I wanted to go the opposite way, obviously, and I apologize. I'm just so excited about this. In 2002, he again finished second in the Cy Young, and he had a 23-7 record. He finished behind Randy Johnson, again, his teammate. Again, collectively, they go 47-12. He had a higher ERA, almost a full point higher than Randy Johnson. I'm not arguing that Randy shouldn't have been the Cy Young. He should have been 10.7. But Schilling had, ready for this, he had a higher WAR than the winner in the American League that year, Barry Zito, who had a 7.2. My point being, maybe if Schilling were playing in the opposite league, and again, this is all the ifs and stuff like that, but if Schilling were playing in the opposite league, he might have won the Cy Young. And then the last time he finished second, that was 2001. Of course, he finishes again behind his compatriot. It is unbelievable. Randy Johnson, who had a 10.1 WAR, even though he was 20. Here's something I still don't understand. And again, I'm perplexed by the WAR. And I've done this a number of times on the show, but the more and more I'm seeing this, the more and more I'm saying there's something very, as in Stripes, something very wrong with this situation, okay? Schilling had an 8.8 WAR to a 10.1 for Johnson. He had 22 wins and 6 losses. Randy had 21-6. His ERA, yes, higher, 2.98 to 2.49. Of course, Johnson led the league. But he had 6 complete games to Johnson's 3. And he threw more innings to lead the league with 256.2 to Randy Johnson's 2.49. Now I know you can go into, he did give up the most home runs in the league with 37. Johnson only gave up 19. However, he only gave up 39 walks to Randy Johnson's 71. And yet, look, I'm still trying to always get my arms around this WAR, but I know it could be very slight and stuff, but to me, I'm not saying that Johnson didn't have a better year. What I'm saying is you're going to tell me that he's almost 2 points higher, 1.3 higher with those stats, which are very similar. Now, if you said to me, Johnson was 10.1 and maybe Schilling was 9.8, and believe me, I know we're talking, it sounds like it's not a big deal talking about the numbers, but in order to earn WAR points, it's quite a difficult feat. Okay, so that gap between them is huge. Now, if you said, well, you know what, it was 10.1 to let's say 9.5 or 9.6, I kind of get it. But anyway, Schilling finished again higher than Roger Clemens, who had a 5.7. In fact, had Schilling again been pitching in the American League, he was higher than any of the candidates for the Cy Young that year. And I just want to do this one. I didn't really look at the year that Schilling finished fourth in the Cy Young, and that had to be he was 14th in the MVP. He finished in the top 10 twice that I see. This is 1997. So it wasn't like it was courtesy of the pennant winning year. But here's the Cy Young. Roger Clemens won in the American League 21-7, 11.9 WAR. He had a 2.05 ERA, 264 innings pitched. They all lead the league. Here is Schilling, who finished fourth. 6.3 was his WAR. Yes, he finished behind Danny Nagel, Greg Maddux, and, of course, the winner was Pedro Martinez. So the 3 times he finished second or runner-up, he could have bested the American League winner, okay? That year, not so much. But then again, he was only 17-11. He led the league in games started. He had a 2.97. He had a 607 winning percentage. Ready for this? And this was 1997 for a team that, remember when I was saying he's 6 games over 500. This team finished 26 games under 500. It's amazing, okay? Schilling, and here's where we get into, in my last few minutes, his WAR is higher than Sandy Koufax, okay? And I really believe this, that Schilling, maybe he's getting hurt by the fact, and I talk about the Dick Allen and kind of like the Dick Allen and move, that he played for so many teams that there's no real identification. I don't know if that really is the case with Schilling, because most fans know him for 2 things. He helps end the curse by helping to beat the Yankees in the championship 2004 for the pennant. And then he also helps provide the first championship in a franchise's history with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And significantly, and I do say it significantly, he beats, or the Arizona Diamondbacks beat, the team that you want to win, to really give it some oomph, to give it really some support, and that's the New York Yankees in 2001. I mean, if you're going to win, if you're going to win your first franchise, might as well be against the team that embodies everything about baseball from the American League, and that's the Yankees. When you think baseball, the first team that you think of is the Yankees. And twice, not once, he beats the Yankees, or helps to beat the Yankees, in order to provide a franchise first for the D-backs and to end the curse of the Bambino against the New York Yankees. And here's the beautiful thing. Then they got to go on and beat or compete against the St. Louis Cardinals, who are a thorn in the Red Sox franchise in 2 of the last 4 World Series. Remember, they lost 2 dramatic. They lost 4 straight 7-game series. They lost to the Cardinals in 46 on the late throw by Pee Wee Reese that would have nailed maybe Enos Slaughter, who raced all the way from first base to score the winning run. They beat the impossible dream team, the Cardinals, in 67 with Bob Gibson, the heroics of Bob Gibson and Lou Brock. Then they lose to the Reds in the 75 Classic, and it is a classic. It brought baseball back to the forefront in, I think, many American fans' hearts, dreams, and eyes. And then, of course, they lose in 86, even though they're up 3-2 to the New York Mets. Of course, the Bill Buckner debacle and all the rest of it, who's unfairly treated in that. But nevertheless, they lose 4 straight Game 7s. Now they get an unbelievable, if a fiction writer wrote this story, Nobody would ever believe it. They come all the way down from 3-0, beat the Yankees in Yankee Stadiums in 2 straight with Schilling taking the mound, beat them. Then, so that's 4 straight wins. And then they sweep the Cardinals, who had been a thorn in their side, like I said, in 2 of those 4 heartbreaking Game 7. They won 8 straight. You can't ask for more. And then, of course, Schilling is on a couple other World Series teams with the Sox. I believe that he was with the Sox. Yeah, he's with the Sox when they beat Colorado, and he beats with St. Louis. Pardon me, okay? So he's on another Red Sox winning World Series team when they beat Colorado. And in that series, they also won 4 straight. So here's a guy who is baseball history, and yet he keeps getting shut out from the Hall of Fame. And he is ahead in terms of WAR points of over 50-plus Hall of Fame pitchers, including, like I said, the icons of the 60s, Sandy Koufax and Whitey Ford. He is even ahead of some contemporaries like Tom Glavine. And yet he's still not in Cooperstown. He won 216 games. He actually had a 597 winning percentage. So if you equate that to a regular 162 game season, he's winning 97 or 98 ball games. He's a full almost 30 games over 500 on teams that finished on an average 2 games over 500. He had some of his best years with some of the worst clubs. But in the most pressing times, Schilling was worth a pound of gold. Was actually worth more than his weight in gold. Curt Schilling should be in the Hall of Fame. 216 wins, an iconic world champion. Curt Schilling, Hall of Fame. This is Will O'Toole for Park Ridge Sports History. Hope you join me next week. Thank you again.